What is up, fam? So I'm going to share a game with you now that we just played in a lesson. And this is a lesson with Nick. We've done, I think it's our third lesson now that we played. And we started by him announcing that he's moved openings. And that now he's trying out the Hippo, which you can play with both the white pieces and the black pieces. Now, I said I've never played the Hippo before, but I would be happy to improve myself, and maybe I can add some insights from the point of view of principles and tactics to say, well, if you're going to play the Hippo, what should we be looking out for? So it was a really instructive lesson. It was a great lesson. And I thought I'd just go over the game with you guys now. So we're playing against the Maya 1 bot on Lichess. And it goes as follows. So we have e4 from Maya. We play knight g6. And preparing to fianchetto. Now this move, really interestingly, the Stockfish really disapproves of this move. It wanted white to play d4. And for about the next 5 or 6 moves, it said, still push d4, right? So we talk about how important the controlling the center is, and if your opponent allows you to control the center, grab the damn center. Okay, Maya didn't do it, so we push ahead with the fianchetto. So what is the Hippo setup? So the bishop, so you fianchetto both bishops, you also push your central pawns, and you generally put both knights in front of the royal pair. You then also push a6 and h6, okay, or the equivalent from the other side of the board. Okay, so it's kind of a standard setup idea, and you'll notice that we are not contesting the center. We're not putting any of our pawns on d5 or e5. So it's a hyper-modern Hippo right now, with a double fianchetto idea. They develop a knight, we push a central pawn, they develop a knight, and none of this really matters. It's not really critical because we haven't actually engaged the enemy yet. Okay, so we prepare the second fianchetto. They play bishop e2. This is kind of conservative on white's side. This bishop this bishop is not in a great position. Okay, you see it's actually got no scope at all on the board. So we then fianchetto the queen's bishop. They castle, and we push pawn to e6. Okay, so the continuation from here would be to put both knights in the center here. It's a very solid kind of setup. And then this, and the point of these moves is let's put that in red, all right? It's to stop the knights or the bishops from coming to b5 and g5. Okay? And so you might think, well, this is a really boring setup. Why would we ever do this? I mean, if you play Blitz, it probably means that you can play most, like complete development in the first 10 seconds of your game a lot of the time. Okay, well, let's see what happens. So now Maya lashes out with an attack against our queen. Okay, so what we did in the lesson is first we played the game, then we went over the game again and said to ourselves, well, what happened? How do we explain the outcome? And then finally we go through it again with the engine to see, well, what did we miss and how can we improve? So one of the things that we thought about was, for example, pushing f6. And the problem with f6 is, yes, it comes with tempo against the bishop. We're attacking the bishop, we make the bishop move away. But the bishop then moves away, okay? And how do we end up? So if I did this, bishop moves away, right? We are just worse. Okay? Why are we worse? Because we fianchettoed a bishop, and bishops love to have a long line of sight. They're snipers of the chess world, right? So this is not good. This is not good. We shouldn't push f6, right? We play knight e7, which is the most common move. So in fact, I've got Lichess here to set to 1800 and 2000, so I can see what goes on in the on the players database. Most winning move here is queen d2 at strong intermediate level. But we'll see what happened in the game. In the game, they trade, and we recapture with the queen, and then they push d4 in the center, right? Now, we centralize our knight to d7, and this is very typical, okay? Most commonly played move here is d5. That is what we have. Now, this is a really, really critical point because we just had a conversation about the bishop or the minor piece imbalance. So, we have two bishops and one knight. White has two knights and one bishop. Okay, so we are stronger in bishops. They are stronger in knights. Now, bishops in general like to have lines of sight, and they like to have open and fluid boards. Now, we did consider the move e5 here, but the move e5 blocks the entire center, and that makes this bishop bad, and it makes this bishop bad. So I think that would be a reprehensible move to play that. So after they do this, then you have to consider, well, if that, well, I destroy my bishops, right? They're going to be forever poor and weaselly. If I take, they could move in with a knight. That then hits my queen. It also hits c7 with the threat of a fork, right? But then think again. Well, what if I don't do anything? What if I allow them to take here? Okay, so we went, actually, that's not bad. And if they push this, that's not bad because we've got three attackers on it, right? So we're not scared. So we castled. And then they took. And we thought, okay, we've got two options. Queen takes or f-pawn takes. And clearly the f-pawn takes was the correct continuation. Why? Well, first of all, we're capturing towards the center, right? We've now got two pawns here that have got some control over the center, right? These two squares are now well covered, but more than anything else, we open up the f-file. So we have now a semi-open f-file where we've got our rook because we've short castled. So looking at Hippo-style games, what kind of positional structure should you be looking out for? This is a really, really good example. Our bishops are still both very active, right? They've got loads of potential in the game. And what's more, our rook is now an active player in the game. We have bishop here, pinning this pawn. Okay, and we played our knight here to to e5. The machine, this was the only kind of, this was an inaccuracy, right? The machine wanted us to play our knight to c5, which is a move we did not consider in the game. What's good about c5 is it defends this pawn. And you'll see why in a minute. But we played this, we thought, well, let's harass the bishop and also force the issue with this knight. Because if white just was careless and lazy and didn't do anything, we now have the threat of knight takes knight, check. And queen can't take because rook takes queen and then g takes. So it has to be g takes, creating another pawn island. That's now three pawn islands and an open king. Okay, so you've got to do something. So he takes. Now we have options. What if we take with a pawn, right? Well, if we take with a pawn, it's not towards the center because it's already kind of central. Then again, we blunt this bishop. This would not be good. This bishop now is miserable and will hate us. So, of course, we take with the bishop. And now we have queen g4. And the thing about queen g4 is it's putting pressure on this pawn. We know this pawn is pinned. It can't move. The pawn is also defended only once by our queen, right? And we have a few options. You could play rook fe8. That would be bad because we've got a rook on a semi-open file. The more open space a rook can see, the happier it is, right? It wants long rolling fields. So that would be a really bad move. We considered rook a to e8, and then we also considered rook to f6. Now the engine actually prefers rook a to e8 here, adding a second defender, because if bishop takes, queen takes, you might trade queens, but they've given up a bishop for a pawn. Right, that's not the move that we played. We played rook f6, and one of the reasons we played rook f6, aside from protecting the pawn, is we have then ideas of playing rook A to f8 and doubling up where? The f file, right? We've got pawns on every file of the board except one, right? Which is this f file. So it's all about the f file. They now bring their rook over to d1. We double up our rooks on the semi-open f file, right? And this is something that we do in lessons as well, is we say, well, what's the story of the game? Why was the game won and lost? Well, it's all to do with this f file. They now push f3, which we didn't like, and we didn't believe, and we didn't approve of, partly because we still have a dark squared bishop, and it's opened up this potential line of attack towards the king. Now hold that thought, because it comes back later. So not a great move. We now decided to get our king off the light square, stick it on a dark square. Either of these actually turned out to be fine moves, which actually also then breaks the pin on the bishop, on the e6 pawn. They then spin their knight and pivot it round here. Okay. Now this was a point where I started banging on about trying to get rid of this bishop because it's annoying us with its constant pressure on e6. So we started talking about pawn moves and shuffling this up an a5 and trying to trap the bishop and stuff like that. What we didn't do in the lesson was ask, why did our opponent play this move? Okay, so one reason might be to prevent this bishop check, but the rook's already guarding that, so it didn't really matter. It also hangs this pawn, by the way, which is quite important, but it might also have been to prepare the move pawn to f4, which is actually what follows. So we now play c6, and this was a kind of mistake in the game, because we're thinking only about this bishop, but we had the opportunity to grab this pawn. Now, creating two isolated pawns. Now what white should have played here is pawn to c3, protecting the b2 pawn. They did not do that, they pushed f4. And this was kind of mistimed. Now, we can't take this pawn. We've got three attackers, right? But white has three defenders as well, so we'd have lost a piece for a pawn. It doesn't work. But we did grab on b2. And now they push, okay, attacking our rook, and we trade off. And here we come up with a really nice sequence. So queen c5 check, right, which Nick spotted. King moves out of the way, and the finish is lovely. We trade rook with check. Okay, the only legal moves I think here are to trade rooks or to put the knight into g1. But if knight g1 here, it's just mate. And so we end up with rook takes, and now knight in g1, and then it was checkmate in the end. Okay, and what's the story of the game? The open f file, right? So if you go over it again, right? So hippo, hippo, hippo. Very interesting opening, actually. Not great idea here, and finally they grab the whole center. We just withhold from reacting, right? We don't get drawn into reacting to this move d5. We just castle, and now we open up the f file. And I haven't got the eval going or anything here. We're telling the story of the game. Here it should be knight c5, not knight e5. Okay, our bishop becomes active. It's out on the board now. We defend, but again, preparing to double up on the f file of frustration, the fantasy f file, whatever it may be. Okay, and this was our kind of weakness. We should really have grabbed while we had the chance, really weakening his pawns. Now we do it, and this just doesn't work. Okay, so I thought you'd enjoy that. If you would be interested in studying the Hippo more, I'm kind of interested in it as well, and I think it would help my students. So yeah, please put in the comments, yes, Hunty, we want to see much more Hippo, or no, it's stupid, we don't want to see it at all. But Solomon Riddell, also from Chess Giant, also does quite a lot on this opening as well. So if you want to know more, you can always start following the Chess Giant if you're not already. But other than that, yeah, let me know if you're interested. Thank you for watching. See you later.